stay down here to redirect anybody. Something happening like that?
Okay, it's 9:30. Shall we go ahead and start? And Tom always starts with introductions, so I guess we'll do the same thing. My name is Lori Carnahan. I'm with Human Resources.
Jill John Perry, Douglas County Administrator's Office.
Jason Williams, Locus 1596.
Tony Wheeler, City Attorney.
Doug Green, Division Chief, Fire Medical.
Sean Cochran, Division Chief, and Denton Fire Chief for Fire Medical.
Dean Garrison, Local 1596.
Seamus Alberton, Local 1596.
Dylan Brown, Local 1596.
Jack Everson, 1596.
Dave Sherman, Fire Medical, Local 1596.
Thank you. Okay. Dean, would you like to read the opening statement?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Opening statement. The purpose of these meetings is to discuss issues concerning wages and/or fringe benefits and/or working conditions between the City of Lawrence and the elected representatives of the International Association of Firefighters, Local 1596. Pursuant to Resolution 6817, these discussions are to be open to the public unless it is mutually agreed to have them closed to the public. However, there will be no public comment during these discussions. Observers are expected to remain silent and are asked to silence their cell phones. Proper decorum for a business meeting shall be observed at all times. Anyone who disrupts the meeting will be asked to leave. Ground rules have been previously agreed to by both parties. The city manager and the president of the International Association of Firefighters, Local 1596, will co-chair the meetings. The city and the IAFF shall designate a backup co-chair for the meetings. These meetings will be recorded and posted to the city's website.
Thank you. Our agenda for today started with an exchange of materials. Did you have anything to exchange today?
No, ma'am, our presentation includes video, so we're requesting permission to utilize the computer and display that when the time comes.
During one of the new business sections?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it a video that you've produced? Is it do you?
No, ma'am, it's produced by the IAFF and it's available publicly on YouTube,
Okay.
on their YouTube channel.
Tony, can I defer to you on how we handle this with city commission meetings and other public recorded meetings?
Right. Usually, because the city would be concerned about being subjected to a copyright violation, we usually want to have some approval from the creator for us to play it, unless you wanted to just play it for us. Since we're videotaping this and these sessions are uploaded to our YouTube channel, or YouTube has some restrictions about uploading copyrighted materials. So in order to be respectful of our use of YouTube as well, I'm not sure if we could post it without having written consent.
Okay, it was developed to play for decision makers, such as city management. We could play it without broadcasting it to the public,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I think
if that is
fair.
preferred.
I
Would that be like in closed session? Could we do that, or?
Well, I mean, they are members, so the audience is members, and if it's not broadcast, I don't think it would necessarily have to be in closed
I
session,
just
but we
didn't-
could go into closed session.
I just didn't know if our ground rules allowed us to, I know it says that we won't broadcast when we're in closed session, but I didn't know about anything else.
You know, I don't know if this is pertinent, but if it does help, this is a video that we have personally broadcasted on our social media pages as a local, and so it's already been made public. And I think there's words actually in the video that say, show this to your local decision makers.
So
So,
I kind of like the idea of us discussing maybe doing it as a closed session so that we stop the videotaping.
Okay.
Our ground rules indicate that we're in open session and that we video record that,
Mhm.
unless we both agree to move into closed session for for purposes that, would not be appropriate to have on videotape. And since we're unsure whether videotaping a videotape is appropriate, I think I would be in favor of that. I don't know how you feel about your membership not being available to watch it, or.
We would prefer that those people viewing the stream would be able to see the video, but if the group is uncomfortable, we can just tell them where to go to find it.
Okay. Well, here's what I would, this is what I would think, would be a couple of our options, is a closed session where we don't actually even record the recording
Mhm.
on our, so that our videotape is truly video of our interactions. Or, we could defer back to the people that actually manage our website and our YouTube, and we could contact or have you contact Porter or Neil, I don't know if you know Porter, and have him secure permission and make sure that it's okay, or whatever he
Okay.
thinks we need to do in order
Okay.
to be in compliance, because I
Mhm.
don't know those rules. I just have a concern.
Okay. Well, two things, Lori. It'll be a while before we're ready to play the video. We could email the IAFF and request permission. Would email permission be acceptable?
I think
Well,
Porter has to answer
Okay.
that question, don't you think?
yeah, yeah, let's see. I mean, I kind of have to, we'd kind of have to view the video to analyze. I think Porter would have to
Okay.
view the video to analyze
Mhm.
whether that email would be sufficient
Okay.
approval.
We can send the video and break, so to speak, and allow city management to view the video.
And then determine.
I mean, just view the video and then it's viewed
Yeah, let's just do that.
at the end of our presentation. Well, when we get to that point.
Then break and then watch it, like in a caucus
So
session?
essentially closed, but it would
Okay.
be,
Okay,
a caucus, I guess, for the purpose of viewing the video.
I think that's,
Does that follow
I
rules and orders?
I think either a closed session or a caucus.
Okay.
Both of
Okay.
those instances are not
Mhm.
videoed by, are not part of what we said we wanted
Okay.
to videotape, and I think either one of those would be appropriate.
Okay. My second thing was during the presentation, we wanted to just show the various websites where this information is available. It's for purposes of transparency, but also so city management can refer to them as you study outside of these meetings. Are we able to bring those up? Being broadcast, it's just the website that's available on the internet.
I think that would be okay. Do you want to caucus on that a little bit?
For example, as I speak, if I reference an
And
organization,
you
I was
wanna
going to
pull it
bring
up.
up their homepage, and you can see where we got that information. It's meant to lend credibility to our point of view, but also to show our work.
Maybe we could caucus a little bit about that, at an appropriate time. We can do it now or we can do it later. As a governmental entity, when we promote other people's websites, it sort of opens us up to promoting all websites that somebody wants to bring forward. So I just want to think about that a little bit, about precedent setting. Of course, in public comment, I think we allow, I'm not quite sure what we do if a public has a website that they want to put up
And
on
we
our
can
system.
make our presentation without the visual aid. It'll just be my voice describing the computer. So
I think, I appreciate you bringing that up
Mhm.
at the beginning of the meeting. How about, in order to give maybe Tony a little time to think about how we've handled commission meetings? Because personally, I would like to model our activities after something that we do virtually every week.
Yes, ma'am.
And if we feel like we need to involve the people who monitor this for us, then maybe you and I and whoever that person is, I think it's probably Porter, can have a conversation or something like that. Does that sound fair enough?
Yes,
And
ma'am.
maybe we can come back to that conversation as we get close to the new business
Okay.
and caucus if we need to. Does that sound fair enough?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Anything else on materials?
No, ma'am.
We brought today a new printout of the grid that we use for monitoring where we're at with the process
Mhm.
here. So I'd like to pass that out and use that as part of our old business on our contract wording
Mhm.
for that. Thank you.
Thank you all.
He's up.
And I believe we have it up there. This is the same document, and I think if it's okay with you, I'll just move into new business as we go through it, or old business. Is that okay?
Yes, ma'am.
This is the same grid that we email out that I email out to all of us after each meeting. And in the right-hand column, I've been tracking what we have covered at the meetings in a very general sense, just what we've covered and how we left it. At the end of the last meeting, we had indicated that we would bring to you today actual proposed contract language for all of the items that we had talked about
Yeah.
over the last several meetings. So what I did is I used the same grid. I marked it one day later. I marked it the 16th because our last meeting was the 15th. And I made a note at the top of the changes that I made from our 5/15 meeting document that I emailed to you. So everything that I made changes to is in blue, and it's also in the third column. It's in the city column for that. Everything that is in black ink was on there before. We've had language out previously. So I guess I would suggest that we just move through the blue ones, because those are new, unless you would like to move through all of them. And that way we can then move on to the new business, and or unless you have any counter proposals on language.
Okay.
Does that sound good?
Yes, ma'am.
So to start with, the first item is I went ahead and moved over the cover page language, which there are no changes except that I put in January 1, 2020, and then through December 31, but I left it blank because we haven't really talked about that yet. The preamble is just as we had given it to you probably on the 29th. Article 2, duration, we had some conversation about that, and again, we didn't really have any conversation. This is the length of the term, and it's on the cover page, and it's also in the document. So I just copied it again, put January 1, 2020, left the ending part blank. Article 3 and 4, I think we previously talked about that language, and it did not change. Same with Article 5, on 5.1, 5.2, 5.3. 5.4 was one we had talked about in some of our meetings, primarily on the 13th, it looks like. So I just, anything that the city had said that they wanted to strike from the agreement, I just used the word strike in there to notate that we are suggesting that it not be present in the next agreement. Same with section 5. Well, it's not the same, but 5.25 is new since the last time. All I did with that was, I believe we said at the very beginning that we would like to replace the word union with IAFF throughout the document. So that is what I did here, is I took the current language, moved it over, and replaced those terms as we had indicated we would like to do. Next section, no change, dues. Section 5.3 was the discussion on the fire pack payroll deductions, and the city would like to strike that language from the agreement. Section 5.4 IFF information, I put that in parentheses so that we would know what I did. On that one, I just changed the word union to IAFF throughout there. Section 5.4.2, same thing, replace the word union with IAFF. Same with 5.4.3, no other changes. 5.5, we had previously presented language on that in one of our documents, and so it's not any different than the 15th. And on 5.6, again, it was just the wording change between union and IAFF. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Let me know if you want to slow down and discuss any of it.
Okay.
Mostly just highlighting.
Mhm.
Do you want me to read that language? Do you want to actually read it and talk about it?
Read the language that is just changing the word union to IAFF.
No, but some of the, well, no, but the other sections.
If any one of us wants it, we'll just holler at you.
Okay. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Okay. Article 7 on page 11. Oh, I also noticed when I hit the copy machine last night, the page numbers were not coming off very well. Article 7, policies and procedures. I think that's all been previously presented. What I did, starting with Article 8, which is, Article 8 has a lot of economic items, if not almost all of it, because it's called compensation. I marked everything that at least we, the city had in their initial exchange of documents marked as a economic item, or that I felt was an economic item, and we've held it out of those other discussion agendas. I marked it as economic item here, and we have that scheduled for next Wednesday on the agenda. And so at the end of the meeting, the city would indicate that we would like these items on the agenda for the 22nd, but I went ahead and marked them, mostly so I know where I want to go. And I just marked them economic item. And they're the sections that we had previously indicated that we wanted to talk about with economics. And that runs its way. I also marked longevity 8.3 as an economic item, even though we presented the language with the handbook language. And I'm down 8.3.2, 8.3.3. Just kind of keep going. 8.3.4 and 8.3.5, we had discussed that along with the management rights discussion. And the city had indicated that they were interested in removing those provisions from the agreement. And so I put proposed language in there, which I've been using the word strike, and we're proposing to remove it. So I put our proposed language in there, even though I have it set up to also discuss along with our economic items. But that is our proposed language. And down a few more pages, I'm down to 8.5, all of those previously economic items. 8.6, I was on page 20, I can read it. 8.6 is the acting officer certification, and as we had discussed during the management rights section, we felt like selecting the number of acting officer, not that we don't believe there should be acting officer, and the amount of that as an economic discussion, but we feel like the the chief should be able to designate the number of positions. And so we had mentioned that earlier, and our language is to propose to strike that section, that particular one. And I put that in there because we'd previously discussed it. 8.7, I marked it as an economic item, but I also marked it that we had, we previously discussed that callback as a part of the employee handbook discussion. So that is our proposed contract language for 8.7.1. And we also brought back, in the spirit of bringing back actual contract language that matched our discussion that we had, we have proposed some language for 8.7.2, which is the overtime discussion. Recognizing that that is also an economic item and will come up on that agenda as well, but went ahead and put in proposed contract language for that. Does that make sense? Okay. 8.8, we had previously, that's in black ink, so that is something that had been in one of the previous documents as contract language. 8.8.1.1, to continue down through the military leave, if I recall correctly, at the end of that conversation on the military leave section and options for compensation during that, the only difference between the handbook and this agreement was that one option, which is under 8.8.1.2. So I have proposed that we strike all of the other sections, refer to the handbook, and then made a note in 8.8.1.2 that we wanted to add this language and that we agreed to add this language to the employee handbook for that payment option. Same with 8.8.1.3 and down through 0.1.4 and 0.1.5. All of those are, we felt like was covered in that first paragraph. And 1.6. 8.9, I think this has been in our contract language and in previous documents we've handed out, although I don't believe we've discussed it yet because it's a economic item. But it's been in there for a while. And same, I marked 8.9.2 and 8.10 as economic items that we would have on the agenda proposed for next week as well, or at least to start in with next week. 8.11 probably hits some of the areas that we had no statements on with our information that we handed out initially on the 29th, on April 29th. So any section that didn't have anything in the city column and does not plan to have anything in the city column, it wasn't in our initial proposals, I've just left it blank. So I guess at the end of the day, those are the sections that we would just have no changes in. And so they're blank in the third column entirely with no comments at all. It doesn't mean we don't think they should be in the agreements, that we think they should be in the agreement as they're currently written. 8.11.4, as you can see, and into Article 9, those were both in previous documents, so they're unchanged. Section 9.2, 9.2.1, I think we have proposed to strike that section, and I think we previously discussed that, I think, in one of our agendas. Others, the language on the rest of the way through. Oh, when you get down to 9.3.2, maybe this was me getting a little tired at the end of the day. In previous documents, we had marked sections like 9.3.2 with the word delete and include with 9.3. I left it that way. It's, in our minds, means the same thing as strike, so strike and delete are interchangeable in this document from the way I have used them. I just didn't change it. And it looks like I included one in 9.4.2 that hadn't previously been there. I'm moving on through to section 9.5. We had talked about that previously with the employee handbook language on sick leave, and our official position is that we would like to strike that language after that discussion. And then wellness time off, 9.7. We had indicated that we wanted that to follow the employee handbook, so the language there indicates such. We also modified the title to match the employee handbook title from what is currently referenced in the MOU with that, and I think on down through that. We did realize that 9.7.4 needed to have some specific language with the either in department policy or in the MOU with regard to how to use wellness time off, or and so we've updated that language and indicated that I think the department policy needs to be updated to match it. Wasn't that our thoughts, Sean? I think.
Yes, we don't have anything other than in the MOU here where it says that it can be taken. So we need to update our policy because our policy doesn't match what the agreement says.
That's another one where we should change to wellness.
Oh, too
Sorry.
late in the day. Thank you. I will change that. Is that all right?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, Casey. What?
Just to be consistent.
Thank you. 9.8.4, after the discussion that we've had along with the employee handbook, our language would be to strike that section from the agreement. I think I noted a couple of, and you guys may have some economic items that you would like to add in addition to the ones that I've put, that the city has an interest in with the economic items. But in Article 9, there's a few economic items. 9.10, I think pretty much in its entirety, point 1 and point 2. The language that's sitting here is the same language that we had handed out earlier, but I did mark it as an economic item for the 22nd discussion. Personnel reduction, we had talked about that with the employee handbook and would like to match the language with the employee handbook, so this is the language we would like to have in the agreement. And same, well, we had previously had this in for employee conduct under 9.14. 9.15, we had a lot of discussion on the grievance procedure, and I know that's probably more discussion on it, but I went ahead and put in the language that the city would propose to be in the agreement, understanding that there may be more discussion on the grievance procedure going forward, but this is the language we would that we would like to have in the agreement. And it's, again, pointing to the employee handbook. All the sections that are indicated as strike throughout the grievance procedure are not that we don't believe you should have a grievance procedure, it's that we feel like it's covered in that first statement under 9.15 in general. And that goes through for several pages and several sections. There is some on page 42, it starts, I think, 9.17 for clarification. There's some sections under 9.17, such as 9.17.4 and 9.17.4.1, .2, .3, that we recognize are not in the employee handbook, but we would like to have those removed from the agreement. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Is it understandable? Okay. And I think by 9.17.5, it's back to employee handbook language. 9.18, I recorded the language that would match our conversation that the city had regarding that section earlier under management rights. I understand it's on the agenda for us to discuss as well today, based on the language you're proposing in your column. But we would like to have that struck from the agreement. And mostly struck not because we don't believe in it, but because we believe it's something that is a management right and should be dictated by department policy. .21 station maintenance, and I think this runs through .1, .2, and into 9.22.1. The city is proposing to strike these sections based on, not that we don't feel these things are important, but we feel these are things that are outside of an MOU agreement and more for department management to be able to guide. And voluntary demotion, I think we feel the same way about that. I think it's covered in department policy. And so we would propose to not have that in the MOU. Okay. And I think we go on with, until we get to 10.1.6. I think this language is the same thing, where we're looking at where we put it in the hands of the department chief with the fire chief rather than in the MOU, or the vast majority of it. That's our proposed language. 9.2.3.1, workers' compensation. During the previous meetings, we had question marks on this, and we had sought for some understanding in the background behind the 82 days in particular. The city would like to have different language in the agreement, and mostly it is with the purpose of aligning the number of days that the city compensates at 100% with closer to what we see in our LPOA agreement. And we want to note that this is something that our LPOA and our IAFF members enjoy that our other employees do not. And so we would like to modify the language to bring at least these two groups closer in alignment with one another. And this is the language that we would like to adjust to. And same with 10.2.3.2. It kind of all falls together in that same discussion. I think 10.3 on the modified duty, we previously presented some proposed contract language. And then 10.5.2, this was the cleanup, removing the gender references, and that is the only difference in that. And 10.5.7 is the next blue ink. And we would, I think we had question marks on a lot of this stuff, and we would like to strike that language in that section entirely. Article 11, training program team. I think we had last time talked about this as being,
This is just an IAFF instead of union.
okay, I didn't put my little paragraph up there. It said I was changing it from union to IAFF, but that is the change in this section. Or the other way around, union to IAFF. Sorry. In Article 13, we talked a little bit, Wednesday about Article 13, and really we're trying to gain an understanding of what that meant, and why we would have it included in this agreement. And at the end of the day, when, after having that conversation here, we believe Article 13 is covered, everything in Article 13 is covered in Article 4, and therefore would not really be necessary. And so we feel like it's not necessary, so we have noted here that we'd like to strike Article 13 due to it being covered in Article 4. And same with, well, not quite the same reason, but Article 14, rights of the employer and the employee, we believe that this is pretty specifically outlined in Resolution 6817, and therefore it not really necessary to be in the MOU at all. So we are proposing to eliminate that language as well. And then I think my very last comment here, and we really had not discussed it, but as I got to the very end of the page, Attachment B, Section 8.2.3, which was a waiver for the purpose of the last agreement, is not applicable any longer, so I made a note of it on there. I left all the sections, I guess I should have put economic items under Attachment A, because those are all things that are part of our economic items with that. So I think, yeah.
Before we close this,
Mhm.
we have a quick caucus, probably no more than 10 minutes, the maximum,
Sure, yeah.
before we close this part.
Would you like to caucus now?
Yes, ma'am, we can caucus.
Let's caucus for 10 minutes till 20 after.
Okay.
Does that sound good? I've got people taking care of it, so we'll have our conference room for caucus here in just a little bit. Thank you for the extra 5-minute delay so I could get the room arrangement straightened out. Okay. What was brought to my attention during our caucus was there was a couple things on here that I had marked as economic items that we really had not had down as something we wanted to discuss this year. And so it plays more into our agenda for next week than it does today, but it's on 9.9.2. 8.9.2. 8.9.2. 8.9.2. Okay. Yeah, and we had marked that as an economic item. We have no interest in doing anything except carrying forward the current language into the next agreement
Okay.
on that. So I'm gonna strike that off of there, those words economic item, and not have it on the agenda. 8.9.1, we had some language because we think it's some cleanup because that AEMT certificate is now in place for everybody where it wasn't the last time. And the same thing with 8.10, state EMS certification fee. We had no desire to discuss that, and just our desire is to carry over the current language with those. So I would like to eliminate those two words from the city column as well on that. So other than these couple of typos that were pointed out to me and corrections on the list in column 3, this is the language that the city, the exact language that the city would like to have in the agreement based on our concerns that we've discussed the last few meetings. I understand that there's discussion back and forth from this point, but this is the language that we feel meets the discussion that we have had previously. And I don't know how we want to come back to these items. I know we want to discuss some of your items for the remainder of today, and then we can talk about how we want to come back to these and move toward tentative agreement in the future. There may be some things that are easy enough to approve, and there may be some that we want to spend some more time talking on. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Anything else? Anyone under old business? Okay, well, I think that moves us then to new business, and we had discussed last time that we would like to spend some of the same time like the city had for the IAFF to be able to discuss some of the things that that you guys would like to see in the agreement.
Real quick, Lori, I'm gonna pull up some information. So, the IAFF website, which I realize we cannot project, has a section called Issues Toolkits. And that is where this video is located, as well as being on their YouTube channel. Just want to mention that the toolkit section states to use these toolkits to educate elected officials, the media, the public, and even your own members on specific issues. We interpret that as permission to play this during a meeting, such as this one. But if city management is still uncomfortable, we understand. I just want to make that point.
Okay. I think we are uncomfortable.
Okay.
Particularly since we are not the experts on that, on what we should or should not have on our website, and what we have permission and not have permission for.
Okay.
So if you're amenable to doing that during a closed session, that would be our preference. Or have us caucus and go watch it and come
Understood.
back, whichever you prefer. Once we get, oh, it looks like they're moving, so we have a caucus room now.
Okay.
The people that were in there.
Oh, okay, I got you.
So would you like us to do that first?
No, we can end with it. We're going to
Okay.
provide extensive background so that's understood, let's kind of that history and what leads to it. The video is a summary of the actual standard that we're referencing, so we can
Okay,
wait.
that sounds great.
All right. James, did you have anything before we
Yeah,
jump
we
into
can
this?
dive in. So, as the agenda states, we're going to start talking about issues that the firefighters are proposing. So I do think it is appropriate to go back just for a quick second and look at the resolution once again, as the city has on multiple occasions said that their intent is to get closer to the language in the resolution as far as the MOU. So we've spent some extensive time on the management rights section. So I would like to head to the section of the resolution that says what we do and can discuss and negotiate. I believe that's section 6, I think, yeah. So after the first sentence in that section about how and when these discussions are to be, or excuse me, how these parties are supposed to notify each other of these discussions, it goes in and it starts, it lists 3 items there. First is wages, second is fringe and or fringe benefits, and our working conditions. So the resolution, unless I'm seeing it wrong, doesn't define wages, but I think we can all agree that that's simply our pay plan. And then it moves into fringe benefits, which the resolution defines as, in the beginning, let me find it here. Sorry. Is any other form of compensation other than direct wages. So I think we can interpret that as leave or health insurance or any other items like so. But the third item is working conditions. The resolution does define it. It is a little more broad. It is not as narrow as fringe benefits. It states working conditions are those conditions of employment that can reasonably be changed through good faith discussion, but which are not management rights nor fixed by ordinance or state constitution. So that leaves quite an open discussion. Management rights are listed. We've already spent extensive time discussing those. But I do think it's helpful to kind of look at what other organizations or agencies define working conditions, since there is some room to talk here. On the Department of Labor's website, specifically their Bureau of International Labor Affairs, there's some language on there that says, let me pull it up here. Every worker should enjoy decent and safe working conditions. This requires, at a minimum, the regulation of working time, the appropriate payment of wages, and effective oversight of occupational safety and health. It also goes on and includes the State Department's views on working conditions. And that reads, the State Department defines acceptable conditions of work as the establishment and maintenance of mechanisms adapted to national conditions that provide for minimum working standards. That is, wages that provide a decent living for workers and their families, working hours that do not exceed 48 hours per week with a full 24-hour day of rest, a specified number of annual paid leave days, and minimum conditions for the protection of safety and health of workers. So there's really 2 points of language in those definitions that I think are worth talking about. The first one I'd like to kind of cover is the, sorry, let me bring up my notes. Go ahead.
I'm making noise on my paper.
Okay. So the first one I think is worth talking about is the establishment of mechanisms. Excuse me, I'm sorry. The establishment and maintenance of mechanisms that provide a minimum working standards. So I think it's important to consider this because over the past few discussions, we've heard the city's team and city managements speak that we should be hoping that our managers are making the right decision, or they feel that it's the responsibility of managers to create a safe working environment or safe working conditions. Truthfully, you know, that is something that we hope that our managers are making those right decisions and making decisions that inspire or create a desirable working place. However, the term mechanism that mechanism that maintains these working conditions is important. That's what this resolution is, and it's what this MOU is intended to do. We can hope and wish all we want, but it is in the best interest of both the city and the firefighters to have a mechanism such as the MOU that ensures this. I think you don't have to look very far to find, instances either around the country or internally with this industry where those decisions, where people put in power, use that to their advantage to put workers or people under them in an unsafe or an unfair position. Something that is talked about in the headlines a lot lately is sexual harassment cases seem to be making headlines, as well as internally in our industry. There's issues of mental health and occupational cancer, as well as wage theft. So I think moving forward, as our groups understand these issues more often, in future MOU discussions, we'll bring those up. But as of now, what we see in both these definitions from the State Department and the Department of Labor is they both mention safety and health. So I point this out because we can look back at our resolution, and as working conditions are defined, it says they can't be management rights. Looking over management rights, I don't see anything that says that our managers or our city management have the right to set safety standards or direct workers to an environment that could be easily mitigated, or an unsafe or unhealthy environment that could easily be mitigated, or reasonably be mitigated through these discussions. So truthfully, the fact is that if there is any language in the MOU or any proposed language from either party that has the potential to affect firefighter safety and health, and there are numerous sections, Dean is going to talk more detailed about one of them this afternoon. It's truly a working condition, and we believe that to be a fact. Now, I understand that our job in particular has inherent dangers. However, let me catch myself. However, working conditions can change from department. An office worker may not have their life put at risk because they have antiquated software or antiquated training. Whereas with firefighters are provided antiquated equipment, antiquated training, staffing standards that don't meet national standards, that is a real risk to life and health. It directly can affect whether our firefighters go home at the end of their shifts, where in other departments that might not be the case. So I just wanted to spend some time reviewing our point of view on working conditions, and that the resolution does allow us to negotiate and discuss any item that would affect our safety. So.
I would be interested in hearing if there are some specific working conditions that you would like to discuss during during these negotiations.
Yeah,
Is there
I
something in
think our
particular?
proposals, one of them obviously is the minimum staffing language that we proposed, and Dean will go into more details about that. But it's not as if we are not cognizant of management rights. I believe something that Dean is going to talk about is that our current language also observed management rights, and from our perspective is not infringing upon them. Because the point of these discussions is to find that mutual ground where firefighters and the city management team are benefiting. We're both benefiting, correct? So if a priority of ours is safety and a priority of the city's team is management rights, well, we can accomplish that by creating language that addresses both of those with minimum staffing, and I think Dean's going to get into that.
Okay. Before we start that, can I ask you one more question about?
Yeah, go ahead.
And it's just a little piece that you put into your statement, but you mentioned something about wage theft, and I did not recognize that as I recognize some of the
So
other
that's not,
things.
I'm not hinting that is something that we are trying to propose. I was just
Okay.
hinting that there are real examples out there within our industry of working conditions that have issues. I think there's plenty of headlines out there which you would find that cities were paying firefighters in certain firefighter ranks illegally, so.
Oh, so that's what you mean by
Yeah,
wage
that's all I
theft?
mean.
I didn't know what wage
Yeah.
theft meant.
Okay.
So repeat that again. What does wage theft mean? I mean, I know what health insurance is, I think, and I know what time off benefits are and what wages are, but I didn't know what wage theft was.
So it would just be the inappropriate payment,
Okay.
and I think a simple, a Google search can find yourself plenty of information.
Shane, would you repeat your definition? I think it was the State Department one that.
The
talked
state,
about the
yeah,
mechanism.
let me go ahead. So again, these were just on Department of Labor's website. State Department defines acceptable conditions of work as the establishment
Wait,
and
I'm sorry, that was the part, acceptable conditions of work?
acceptable conditions of work, yes.
Okay, keep going.
The establishment and maintenance of mechanisms adapted to national conditions that provide for minimum working standards. That is, wages that provide a decent living for workers and their families, working hours that do not exceed 48 hours per week with a full 24-hour day of rest, a specified number of annual paid leave days, and minimum conditions for the protection of the safety and health of workers.
Thank you.
And one thing I want to say is that I don't want anyone watching this video or anyone in this room or you in particular to believe that because we feel like a particular item is a management right, that we don't think it's important. Employee safety is very important to us. And I believe that our department, along with many of our departments, really work to provide safe working conditions for our employees. So I don't want to suggest or have anyone think that because we believe it's not something to be included in an MOU, that it's not an important item for doing business. And I think that's an important distinction that, that I want us all to remember. I don't discount employee safety.
Mhm.
I don't think anyone at this table discounts employee safety. I think we think it's important. I think what we do believe is that it is something that we hire people like at the other end of this table to be responsible for. And they are responsible for providing a work environment as a part of their job that is safe. And so please don't think that my words mean that we don't believe that there should be a safe work environment. They just mean that we don't believe they belong in a memorandum.
I don't think it's just the people at the other end of the table. I think if you look at the job descriptions for folks in the fire department, it is part of job descriptions for multiple positions within the department, including, I think, engineer and lieutenant specifically talk about doing checks on equipment and.
Safety's incumbent upon everybody within the department. We start that with the recruit class. Talk about crew resource management, where it used to be, the youngest person couldn't say anything. And now we try to tell people similar to if you see something, say something. Because somebody may see something that they're not aware of, and we want them to speak up rather than something happen. So.
Yeah, I guess to be clear, we're not contesting your guys' words that you believe that safety is important. You're 100% right. But safety is a negotiable right by this resolution, and it can be put into a contract.
If I could speak to that
Mhm.
a little bit. Seamus, I do commend you for going back to our document that provides the definitions that really govern our discussions. And I'm looking at the definition of working conditions in the resolution. And as you correctly pointed out in your points, it does say working conditions are those conditions of employment that can reasonably be changed through good faith discussion, but which are not management rights, nor fixed by ordinance, statute, or constitution.
Correct.
And I would point out that under our city code, there is a provision that makes safety a responsibility of the chief. So that would be an ordinance that is fixed and deals with safety. And also, I'd say that the Department of Labor are laws that the city does have to comply with. So I'd ask you to keep that in mind.
Yeah, and that's why I mentioned that, you know, the definition of working condition within the resolution is a little broad, and that's why I went to that. I'm not stating that that is the definition that we're using. I'm simply stating that other organizations harp on safety when it comes to working conditions. Ours is broad enough that we feel like we can include it, as well as, again, keeping in mind the working conditions aspect. And I think we'll find as further discussions with the current MOU language is that those management rights aren't infringed upon, but they are also, in ways, adding accountability through it at all levels with safety. So.
I certainly want to have the opportunity to hear what you'd like to discuss when it comes to minimum staffing.
Okay. Are we good to go? We can get started?
I think so. Does anybody else have any questions?
Does anyone have anything?
Nope.
Okay. Well, today we're discussing our non-economic proposals. But before we start, it's important to remember that this contract was developed, agreed to, and has since been practiced by both the city and the IAFF. Our proposals build on this strong foundation and protect the integrity of this relationship that spans decades. With that said, our first proposal regards adding NFPA 1710 as the standard for minimum staffing. Staffing is a working condition because it directly impacts our ability to work safely. Safety has been consistently emphasized by both sides during these negotiations and has been the reoccurring theme of negotiations in years past. This is most evident in the language, the current contract language for minimum staffing. As we move into our presentation, we realize the city also has a proposal regarding minimum staffing, which is to eliminate it completely. Clearly, we're not on the same page. The information we present today will also address this surprisingly blatant disregard for our safety. So we're not able to use visual aids, which would help quite a bit, but we can move slowly and be descriptive. So first, I'll start with current MOU language. You'll find this in section 9.18, minimum staffing. It reads, I'll wait, Lori. No problem.
9.18?
9.18.
9.18.
Page 25.
45 in this document.
45? Oh, okay.
Great. So it reads, the union and the city agree that firefighter safety is of utmost importance in the performance of the duties of the department. It is also recognized that the effectiveness of operations is dependent upon the number of firefighters committed to the mitigation of community emergencies within the scope of the department's strategic plan. Therefore, to ensure safety and effectiveness, the union strongly recommends to the city regarding management decisions that pertain to full-time staffing levels that Quint, Engine, and Rescue ladder companies are staffed with a minimum of 4 personnel each, and that ambulance companies are a minimum of 2 personnel. Nothing in this section or agreement shall be interpreted as requiring certain minimum staffing levels or removing the sole authority of management to determine staffing levels. It acknowledges all of our commitment to safety, which we've been talking about this morning. So now we really want to talk about what NFPA 17. I'm willing to bet most people here understand that. We've discussed it before. It's not new, but for purposes of negotiation, we're going to review it. So, if you're able to follow along with the internet, you can reference what I'm saying. The NFPA is the National Fire Protection Association. It's a global self-funded nonprofit organization established in 1896, which is devoted to eliminating death, injury, property, and economic loss due to fire, electrical, and related hazards. They've just developed standards, in this case 1710, for the workplace that keeps us safe. Okay. If you have access to NFPA's standards, you can find 1710. It's a rather thorough document, but Chapter 5, Section 5.2.2 is what addresses minimum staffing levels. We will have a video to play that summarizes this standard, but as of right now, I'm just going to touch on it, okay?
Could you repeat that chapter?
Yes, sir. It's Chapter 5, Section 5.2.2, staffing. And that's under Fire Department Services, Chief. Lloyd, you have a question?
Yeah, much like the employee handbook where we brought it on a flash drive, do you have this on a flash drive? Not on an internet link, but in a document?
No, ma'am.
The video
No,
itself? or-
the
No,
document.
this document.
Okay.
I don't.
No.
Okay, well, I'll go back and read it then.
Okay.
And you said 5.2?
Yes, ma'am.
The
Okay, thank
department might. Does,
Don't
well,
you have to
we
have
can, we
membership
can
or
get it,
something?
yeah.
You
We
can
have
just
membership.
log on.
Chief, does the
Oh.
department,
Yeah,
There's,
we can get a copy.
you literally, you'll see a tab that says free access. Select that tab, username, password, and you'll have access to all these standards.
Okay.
Could I suggest, I think it would be helpful if you all could provide that information to us, if there's specific language or something in that standard that you want to refer to, it'd be really helpful to have that in front of us. I don't have that membership and tried to search this out on my own and was not very successful. I could find summaries of it, I could find kind of fact sheets, but I couldn't access the full language.
Okay. We can just email all this out. I mean, like I said, it was part of the presentation, so
Okay.
now we're
Okay.
getting my,
Okay,
verbal rendition.
I'll let you,
So, Some
I'll let
history
you-
here to lend credibility. 1710 is an evolving standard. You know, it really starts with operational effectiveness, but quickly that was noted to directly correlate with safety. More firefighters obviously are more effective operationally, but they're more safe that way. This was created, and this is very important, this was created by very important organizations within the fire service. Obviously and I mean, when I say created, everyone works together as a committee. The IAFF, International Association of Firefighters, the IAFC, the International Association of Fire Chiefs, of which our fire chief, executive staff, and division chiefs and captains are all members of. The ICMA, International City County Management Association, the Center for Public, what we call CPSE or CIPSE, Center for Public Safety Excellence, which in turn includes the Commission on Fire Accreditation International, the CFAI, of which we are an accredited department. I mention this because these organizations created this standard. Makes it the industry standard. You may know some history for the Center for Public Safety Excellence is made by the International Association of Fire Chiefs and the International City County Management Association. So we usually say I-Chiefs and ICMA. They created CIPSE, all of which in turn created this standard. Okay, it was funded by FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and the Department of Homeland Security. And of course, the research that ultimately proved this was conducted by NIST, which is the National Institute of Standards and Technology. If you review NIST, it is an incredible organization that conducts a lot of science stuff. So, all very credible. This isn't somebody somewhere's, personal project and something they think we should be doing. This is tried and true by the most important organizations in our profession. So, that said, we do want to share a video that summarizes the standard. We could do that. It's approximately 5 minutes long, and it touches on the minimum number of firefighters required in various types of incidents. I will share with you guys a website called firereporting.org. This is where you can find the research in complete detail. You'll see the ability to read the dry text, watch links to summaries in that text, actual videos explaining each experiment, as well as some other stuff. Let me read the standard, and then I'll touch on that website a little more.
Okay.
So, National Fire Protection Association, NFPA 1710, is the standard for the organization and deployment of fire suppression operations, emergency medical operations, and special operations to the public by career fire departments. And so when you go to this website where all of this information is posted, you'll find it divided into those 3 categories. And like I said, you can read the text, you can watch the videos, and then some of the other supplemental information. All of this is what created the standard. We are asking for that standard to be included in the language regarding minimum staffing as how we define minimum staffing. The video is very easy to find for anyone in attendance or maybe watching. Go to YouTube. You can literally type in NFPA 1710. The IAFF TV YouTube channel is where this is posted.
Okay, say that one more time, please.
So, the YouTube channel called IAFF TV has an NFPA 1710 video. Very easy to search.
Would you like to caucus and watch that?
We'd appreciate the attention if whatever means necessary to do that, we support. So,
And let me, which I would like to do. Let me back up just a second. And ask about the NFPA standard. Are you proposing in your in the language for the agreement to include the entire standard, or a section of the standard, or a statement? What is it exactly
so we're
you
hoping
want
to write the language together. We believe this is a collaborative document. We would encourage reference to the standard with that section addressing staffing specifically cited.
Okay. Are there, and I realize I haven't read the
It's a big
entire thing.
document because it
So-
includes operational effectiveness as well as the safety.
So as far as section, let me take a note here real quick first though.
Mhm.
So your interest is having us write the language together in a collaboration, referencing the staffing level specifically. And the staffing level is one section of several in the standard?
Well, it would be multiple sections,
Okay,
but there
or one topic.
multiple subsections, I should say. It's a section called staffing that has subsections that have
Okay,
that includes this information. So, and we could go through either together, or we could write the language ourselves. Like I said, in the spirit of collaboration, we're
Okay.
approaching this like we would write together.
okay.
But
What
that
are-
was also a proposal before the city's proposal to eliminate it
Right.
altogether.
Right. So so there's other sections in 1710 that are not as relevant to this discussion in your mind? And what are some of those
They're
other
relevant. I
sections?
mean, we believe in NFPA 1710.
Mhm.
internally through our labor management, process, we touch on different things that fall under this standard, and, we have future goals to have an actual dedicated committee to this. But as of right now, the section in the MOU is specific to minimum staffing, so that's what we're addressing.
Okay, and you feel like some of those other sections are part of your labor management process?
We feel like they're all relevant, and
They're
we're
all
having to
relevant.
discuss the standard in its entirety.
Okay, but the minimum staffing section is of primary importance?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, well, then, if you don't mind, let's either, let's caucus. Do we have a computer here that we can watch in our caucus session, one of you guys? Okay. Okay, then how about give us an opportunity to watch
Okay.
it? You said
Yes,
it
ma'am.
takes about 10 minutes,
I think the video is only 5 minutes.
5 minutes?
You've probably seen them. These are popular videos when explaining something like a standard. It's a dry erase board, where somebody kind of draws out, and it's narrated with some illustrations. So, like I said, they're very popular. You find these for all, laws and legislation and
We have some
standards.
that we produce in the
Uh-huh.
city.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
well, let's caucus until 11:15.
Okay.
Let us go watch it,
yes, ma'am.
and then we will reconvene. Does that
Great.
sound good?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is everyone ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, well, let's reconvene. Thank you again for giving us the additional time. We were having some technical difficulties, and Casey was called away for a few minutes.
Great.
Thank you. We watched
Okay.
we watched the video, and I think I'm going to be able to find it and rewatch it, so I can watch it a couple of times
Right.
between our meetings, and I appreciate it. I had a couple of takeaways in watching it, but I would be interested, now that I've seen it, to know, you know, in our remaining minutes, what it is you would like us to take away from it, so I can be sure
Okay,
and
yeah,
concentrate on that,
absolutely.
now that I have a reference.
Yes, ma'am. So again, firereporting.org is where you're gonna find the research in complete detail. You know, those 3 categories that the standard touches on. This includes the text, the summaries, the videos, and all the supplementals that went into it. So we do encourage the city to go to that website, because it's all there. And so our big takeaways is that NFPA 1710 is the industry standard, which means it's the floor, not the ceiling, okay? It's a minimum, so if we're below that minimum, we're not even on the floor. But by no means does it have to be, can we not exceed its recommendation. Additionally, in response to the city's proposal, you know, removing this language starts a dangerous cycle towards a normalization of deviance, which ultimately leads to firefighter injury and death. So our big takeaway is exactly that. This is an industry standard that directly correlates to the safety of firefighters.
Is there somewhere in the documents, in the website, the firereporting.org, where it moves more into the firefighter safety? One of the things I took away from this video was put this in front of decision makers, because it's the kind of thing that improves response time, community safety, saves lives. They didn't specifically say which lives, but saves lives, and those are the things that I took out of the video.
Okay.
Is there a place in the research where it talks a little bit more about that, so I can correlate it to the MOU discussion versus a community response time discussion?
Okay, we can look for a summary that specifically addresses safety. We think it's easy to understand that
Yeah.
operational effectiveness and safety, which is part of the current language, is a result of the standard, you know, which is everything from response times to how we operate on the fire ground. Saving lives, we like to think is self-explanatory for everybody involved, whether you are being subjected to that incident or you're responding to the incident. But we'll look into that for you.
Okay.
Can I ask a
Sure.
question? Sorry.
Our 3
It's
minutes.
hard to not be able to see everybody back here. So it sounds like you all are proposing, changing the existing language away from, the existing language now just says strongly recommends. So it sounds like you're after language that's more than just a recommendation. Is that fair to say, or?
No, ma'am. This is still a recommendation. It's just that the city and the IAFF recognizes this standard as the industry standard, and it understands and accepts that the IAFF defines minimum staffing by these recommendations.
Okay, so,
So you'd be open to continuing to include that existing language that talks about nothing in this section shall be interpreted as requiring certain minimum staffing
Yes, ma'am.
levels? Okay.
We currently do not meet these standards. We understand that, but having language like the city and the IAFF agree that firefighter safety is of utmost importance in the performance of our duties is important to us. It acknowledges where the city and the IAFF stand in regards to safety. It sets precedents for future groups, future IAFF executive boards, future city management, future fire chief and executive staff, so that if any one person or all of those persons want to dismiss an industry standard, they can. It's clearly stated here. It's one more mechanism to ensure safety for firefighters.
Okay.
Dean,
Yes, sir.
I'm trying to get more familiar with the standard, I have a basic understanding of it. When you say that we're not meeting it, what are we not meeting it in? What area are we not meeting it in?
So, sir, you reference our strategic plan, for example. I believe it's page 7. It talks about Rescue 5 not being staffed to even meet OSHA's 2 in, 2 out. And it has other language. I can reference that. I know we're running out of time. If we need to continue, if we need to push the pause button and continue this next week, we can. Let's see. So, we'll just pull it up here. Anyway, it talks about understanding this as an industry standard, but that it's currently difficult to meet.
Would you say we do meet a lot of the standard?
Yes, sir.
Within our,
I think our department strives to meet this, absolutely. Like I said, we're not implying anything. This is not a personal attack on any one person throughout the chain of command. It's simply recognizing an industry standard and what our goals are, what we strive to achieve in regards to staffing.
What other Kansas cities have adopted it?
We'd have to look at other cities. I mean, we're not a big fan of, comparables are important with fringe benefits, but when it comes to safety, if every department in the state of Kansas dismissed this, we would say that, we're leaders, and so we don't, and, they compare themselves to us. So, with that said, only 16% of departments in the country provide ALS, and so we're in a small group as it is, a small but elite group.
Okay, well, it is 11:30, so let me ask a question of the table. Do we want another 5 minutes to discuss this? Do we want to get our future agenda and put this on the next agenda to pick up on again? Because clearly
Yeah.
there's some questions.
Okay,
And clearly I think there's some discussion
okay.
yet on this item. At least that's what I'm kind of hearing. What would you like to do? Would you like to close it up and pick it up?
We'd
at the next
encourage management to take some time,
time?
consider their questions, review the information, and resume during another meeting.
Okay, we'll put this on a future agenda. What I would ask is, because I heard you say just a minute ago that you're not looking at the city to adopt 1710, but to use it as a standard, would reference, preferred reference, strong reference, or something like that be more what you're looking toward rather than I guess I'm confused as to what you're actually proposing in the language, so you don't have to answer that question right now because we're at the end of our meeting.
Okay.
Okay. Could you prepare some proposed language for this section that you would propose for 9.18?
Yes,
That
ma'am.
we
It would
could
read
review at the
something.
next meeting?
Yes, ma'am. It'd be
Okay.
along the lines of the city and the IAFF recognize NFPA 1710 as the industry standard for minimum staffing.
Recognize it's the industry
Yes,
standard.
ma'am.
Okay. Do you mind putting that in something you can hand out the next meeting?
Okay.
That would be fantastic.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
It would further state something like, therefore, the IAFF recommends to the city all frontline apparatus are staffed in accordance with NFPA 1710.
Because I know as we, as a city team, move forward, we're gonna wanna look at the current language, your proposed language, the city proposed language, and in coming together in a discussion, it's gonna be helpful to me anyway, to be able to look at it all side by side and start talking about what we may wanna put in a final document. So that would be very, very, very helpful to me, moving forward, if you wouldn't mind doing that for the next meeting. And if you need access to a copy machine to make copies for the group, like I have regular
we
access.
try to use technology,
I know.
be more environmentally
understand.
responsible. We understood that as something that the city is cognizant of.
Thank
So
you.
we were using technology-based visual aids or materials, and typically email our stuff to the city, but we can print whatever was requested.
I would love proposals anyway, formal proposals to be something that's in writing and exchanged.
Okay.
I think we've talked about that in our guidelines. I'd have to go
An
back to,
alternative to that is we can put it in this grid.
that's true. If you
If
send it to
you
me, we could put it in the grid.
Want to propose language and email it, we can put it in this grid,
Okay.
and then we can either print it or we have it pulled up here electronically.
Great, we'll do that.
Okay, either way. And then, so for the next meeting, we're scheduled for the 22nd, I believe, which is next Wednesday. I have a note here that from 9:30 to 11:30, and I have a note that Casey is not gonna be present at that meeting. I think everybody else is gonna be back. We had previously talked about moving to compensation items, which were Article 8, and we had identified at least something in Article 9 that we wanted to talk about. Do we wanna go back to the minimum staffing and then the voluntary demotion first under old business, and then move to, you just keep moving this down the line?
We can continue with our non-economic proposals.
I think that would be fantastic. Do you want me to just put these two items under old business, or would you like to start the list for the new business if we move through those items, before 11:30, or just stop there?
Well, it seems like part is old business and part is new business.
Right.
So wherever it makes sense to everybody, I think we're gonna talk about it regardless, so.
Okay, do you just want these two items? I guess what I'm asking is, do we want these two items, or do we wanna start listing the Article 8 and the compensation, the economic items?
We're prepared to address these two, and if the city wants to start addressing economic items, those can be included.
I think we would like to do economic items
Okay,
jointly. So if
Okay.
we present something on an economic item, I think we would like the IAFF to present at the same time, like parallel
okay,
with each other.
okay,
So if we put Article, for instance, Article
Mhm.
8.1, then I would want us both be prepared to discuss
Okay.
it.
well, I think short of our proposal regarding wage adjustments based on CPI, which may require quite a bit of time,
Mhm.
where we can add our economic proposals as well.
Okay,
And if that's on there, it's okay, we can look at the time and make a decision as to whether or not we can address it.
next, on
Mhm.
Wednesday. Okay, I'll put a generic statement on moving to Article 8, without having specific sections, listed. And then at that time, we can discuss what we want to discuss first or second or third. Does that
Yes, ma'am.
sound fair enough if we get to it?
Yes.
Okay, then I'll do that for the agenda for next time. I will email this out to you, and, I'll plan on moving forward with this one dated the 16th, and then archive our discussion for today that we began a discussion on, with the IAFF on Article 9.18, and then this will be an updated document, so we'll have an electronic version going forward that has, and I'll be happy if you send proposed language for 9.18. I can include that as well before the 22nd, so all of our proposed language that we have to date is in here.
Okay.
Will that work?
Yes,
And if you
ma'am.
don't have it ready, then we'll just include it once it is ready. Does that
Okay.
sound fair enough?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Anything else from anyone? 'Cause
I
know we've
did,
gone over time.
quick clarification,
Okay.
Chief, I referenced the strategic plan, I should have said standards of coverage, I think you probably knew that, but I got caught up in words, so I misspoke. So anyone attending or watching the stream, if they're trying to reference a strategic plan, it's the standards of coverage.
Standards of coverage. Okay. Thank you. Dean, are we ready to adjourn?
Yes, ma'am,
Okay. Thank you.
thank you.